Hi, my name is Vikram Gupta, and welcome to PreSales Collective's Journey to PreSales. We will be listening to fascinating stories of SCs that made their journey into solutions engineering as a career. Our goal is to inspire you, because if they can do it, so can you.
Hello, PreSales Collective. My name is Sam Belcastro, and I am here with Art Fromm, the founder and president of Team Sales Development. We're here today to hopefully inspire you to learn more about pre-sales as a career and maybe jump into it if you're in the middle of a transition. Hey, Art, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Sam? Good to be here, and great to be working with you again.
I'm doing good. Nice early morning, great way to start the day for me. I know it's a little later into the morning for you. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, and moved around the country quite a few times once we started a family, sort of pursuing different opportunities, and just seemed like it progressed through. We lived in Houston for a while. We moved back to Buffalo. We lived in Huntsville, Alabama. Then we moved to Pittsburgh. And in a couple of these places like Pittsburgh, I had a few different opportunities that I was working on, different companies I worked for. And then we moved back to Buffalo about 11 years ago, and now we're back to Pittsburgh again because our kids kind of grew up here, and we wanted to be closer with them, and especially our daughter has 2 kids, so we want to be with the grandboys as they're still wanting to be with us. So it's a little bit about myself, I guess.
That's awesome. I'm also from that northeastern area, Northeast Ohio, so that's great to hear. I guess most would call it the Midwest, but we're pretty close. So yeah, that's awesome to hear. What is something fun that you love to do that you couldn't do in 2020?
Well, the biggest thing really was travel. I mean, I know that in our careers, travel is a big part of it, and sometimes it gets to be old, but I really did miss that for a couple reasons. I missed it because, first of all, I feel like it's, well, first of all, I love the frequent flyer miles, right? And all the status and all that stuff, because I don't think we've paid for a vacation travel, and I can't even remember when, unless we wanted to. But on the kind of customer-oriented side, I think that it was always enjoyable to be with people and develop the relationships and things. And actually, it's pretty good for marriage, too, I think, to get away a little bit and each have your own space. But I found myself almost in some ways more productive when I was traveling because I could spend that time in the hotel room, like doing work and things like that I wouldn't maybe feel as comfortable doing if I was at home, so that I can be spending time with family and things. So the travel had, some benefits to it, despite the fact that we're doing so much of it that it seemed like it was a relief. But it's going to be good to get back into that. I don't think it's going to be as much anymore because everything is virtual. And thankfully, last year, with everything going virtual, I was ready already. So 2020 wound up being my best year ever, even without any travel. So, but that's what I love. I do love to travel.
That's great to hear. I was thinking about the other day as we transition out of the pandemic, all the things that I used to do that I really have not done in the last year, I've had a chance to start doing again. And it reminds me every time I travel back home, it's like, it feels like I never left. And it's just a weird experience. If I haven't done this in a year, but it's still so natural to me or common to me.
Yeah, we just traveled a couple weeks ago to a wedding in Florida, and it was really great just to get back on the plane. Wearing the mask the whole time on the plane wasn't so much fun, but I understand. And it was just great to be able to get on the plane and feel that take off and have some fun and get away.
Well, thank you for sharing that. We'll start diving into some business here with pre-sales and sales engineering. So the first question I wanted to ask you is, so many people stumble into this career. What's your story?
It's a stumbler. So I started in engineering, actually, and but I quickly got involved in software space. So I loved the software tools of engineering. back in the day. I mean, I've obviously been around for a while. And so I was there when CAD and CAM and the computer-aided analysis and all those types of things started. And that, I really love that. Within the first 2 years of being an engineer, I jumped into that. So I was a user and consumer of technology, and I moved to 3 different companies where I did that, running their CAD systems basically as an IT type role, really is what it amounted to. And working with the teams, I was the one that had the budget. I was the one that was being sold to. I get involved with a lot of different types of analysis and support and other things like that. So I started to experience sales and pre-sales as a customer because I was the one that was being sold to. And then at one of the companies I was at, we were a flagship location for the computer software we were using. And it turned out, and I really didn't even think about this at the time, but I got involved early in my career with some pre-sales because that computer company we were using would bring customers into our location to see what we were doing because we were really leading edge, if not definitely bleeding edge at many times. And so I would be the one, since I was so involved with the applications, that was talking with these customers that came in from around the world. And I always remember it because it was in the customer briefing center, and we had the nice, dinner with all the higher ups and everything like that. And I was just starting out in my career. So that turned out to be a little flavor of sales, but I would not say that necessarily inspired me. It was just something I was doing. And then from there, I got very involved with the user groups because I was a consumer of technology. I was really doing a lot of interesting, unique things. So I got involved with the user group meetings and eventually wound up on some of the boards. And that's what connected me to somebody from Huntsville, Alabama at Intergraph, who hired me into what really wound up being my first sales role, pre-sales. It was a bit of a consulting role initially, because if anybody remembers back in the day, Intergraph won a huge contract at the time. It was the largest software contract, something like $290 million for the NAVC, which is the Navy and the sea part of it as far as shipbuilding and things like that. Intergraph had very unique shipbuilding software. So I got recruited by the guy that was running the subgroup that I was involved with in the user group meetings to come on board with Intergraph. And in that role, that turned into sales because Intergraph was working on this in conjunction with the Navy to develop this software, and then they began to offer it commercially. So I moved into a pre-sales management role where I was running a team of SEs, and we were going out and helping with shipbuilding companies to implement the software. And in fact, very significantly, again, early in my career in a pre-sales role as a manager, our team helped a shipyard in Louisiana win a contract for a government vessel that they were building, which is still in service today, completely digital from the ground up. And it was our team that helped that shipyard win the contract from the government. It was the first time a commercial U.S. shipyard had won a government contract for shipbuilding. So that moved into other sales and sales management type roles. I was moved to another couple of companies. One company was the Lockheed Martin division, where I was called technical program coordinator. So we were responsible all the way from pre-sales all the way through post-sales. It was a continuous involvement and relationship with the customers. And in that job, very interestingly, I was also transitioned into and had the opportunity to become an account manager in addition to that. So I had a couple big customers in the Minneapolis area. Donaldson, which is a air filter manufacturer for commercial vehicles and things like that. And then Duracell, everybody knows Duracell. And I had been their technical program coordinator for probably, I think, maybe 2 years or a little less than that. And the company I was working with said, hey, some of you that are doing all this soup to nuts stuff, about the only thing you're not doing is the commission and carrying the quota of the salesperson. So we will offer you that opportunity with nothing but upside potential. And so two of us took it and said, okay, that sounds interesting because we already have the relationships. And so I went from being the pre-sales and post-sales support person on Friday to on Monday, I became the salesperson as well. And Sam, guess what happened when I became the salesperson in addition to the other roles I already had and this deep relationship I had with them? When I became the salesperson, what do you think happened?
Well, you may have lost some trust.
Honestly, on Monday, all of a sudden they're like, 1/3 of what I said, at least they didn't believe. And I'm like, I am the same person that was here on Friday. We have this long-term relationship. They said, no. You're a salesperson now. You're in sales and you have a quota. So we don't really trust it. And it all worked out fine. But I found it very interesting that happened. So did some sales and things and then moved into management where I was running a team of pre-sales SEs in the mid-US. And in that role, I started to develop the team with some things the company that I was with wasn't doing. We got a lot of product training, but what we didn't get was selling, how to do selling. They sort of flea dip us into the sales trainings that the sales people were going through. But it was a lot of quota and CRM stuff and things that didn't help us out. So I was developing my team as their manager, their director, to do some things that were about selling and relationship and all that. And as a result, the company said, we love what you just did with your team. Now come into sales enablement. And so around 2000, I went into sales enablement. And that's what I've been doing really for the rest of my career is sales enablement with their company. And then ultimately in 2004, I formed my own company, which initially was called Technical Sales Development, focused on that. So, and I also did join a global learning company for a while. And that's where I got really involved with sales training across the board for sales reps and for SEs. And then in 2000, just last year, I renamed the company Team Sales Development, my company, Team Sales Development, which is a focus on sales and the SE role. So quite a career, but definitely it was not a planned process. I definitely fell into it.
Well, thank you for sharing. That's a great story. And there are a couple points I want to jump back to that I really loved. The first being you talking about the trust relationship between the AE and the customer and the SE and the customer, and you experiencing that firsthand. That's a really, really cool point to touch, that just that title itself can really change the mindset of who you're talking to and who you're selling to. I did have a question going back to when you switched from the role in engineering to the sales role. And day one on the job, did you know what pre-sales or sales engineering was? Or did you figure it out as you developed in the role?
I didn't know what it was because when I got recruited to move from my engineering job of implementing technology to actually working for the computer company, the software company, it really started out in more of a consultant role. So they were figuring out this huge contract that had been won, and there was a lot of really, really intense kind of object-oriented approach to how to do these designs and all that. So in a way, I was continuing with engineering type mindset, but in a company that was a software company that was selling software. So I wound up morphing. I don't even remember when I started that job if I knew it was going to become sales or pre-sales. I just know it was a phenomenal opportunity, and the guy that I've been working with in this user group was a phenomenal guy. In fact, he was the one that I followed to Pittsburgh. So I moved from Huntsville to Pittsburgh because he also moved there, and that's where I started up with another company. But what I did start to realize is, okay, this is about sales. They're going to be selling the software, and they said, we want you to run this team of SEs that are primarily technically adept at it. And back in the day, we used to call application engineers. So it was really a technical person that was the application side that helped the salesperson with just the technology. It wasn't even so much of a sales focus the way that it is now, where sales engineer is the typical term that we use, because sales is just as important as the engineering part. Once I saw that where that was going, I loved it, and it just really helped me to apply everything. And that's where I think that those initial customer meetings that we had started to come back into play. It's like, yeah, I really enjoyed this, like showing people how they can solve their problems and love my stuff. So how can I help them with what they're trying to do?
How did you shift your mindset from engineering to sales in that moment?
Well, and this is something that's a little bit of a, one of the things that I know we wanted to maybe talk about was people that are thinking about pre-sales. Like you said, anybody that's on here that's thinking about it, the engineering background was just so helpful for me, just in terms of the mindset of problem solving and things like that. So what I looked at it was, we have a solution, and, we want to find people that can benefit from it. So my natural curiosity and my natural interest in what is it that people are doing and problem solving and all that, it just became natural. I didn't look at it as sales. I don't really ever think I looked at it as sales, as in I had something that I needed to sell. It was more like I have a solution that can help people with what they're doing. And that made it very natural for me. And especially since Intergraph at the time was really trying to make their name in the shipbuilding industry, which is very, very specialized. It became a problem of how do we make this relevant for the people that we're talking with. And so it became like a problem solving adventure. And I really saw it more of an engineering and process thing than sales per se.
You mentioned like you have a solution that you want to sell, or not even sell, but a customer has a problem. You have a solution that you want to implement. Tell me about the relationships that you built with that dynamic of helping so many customers solve so many solutions. Did you make friends or potential colleagues?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think that I always, I didn't necessarily purposely approach it this way, but what I looked at it as is let's look at this together as problem solving. So it wasn't like me trying to get them to do something against their direction or their will or whatever. It was, let's both sit on the same side of the table, see what it is you're trying to do. Where's there a fit? What can we do together? And we did develop deep relationships. And I got, there's several different people that moved other places, and we wound up, being connected and things like that when they went there. One of the things about it was developing mindset around that problem solving mentality, because I remember when I was running the pre-sales in the mid-US, there was a salesperson by the name of Jerry who was very, very new. And he had just gotten an appointment with the largest, I think it was the largest at the time, supplier of avionics to the aircraft industry. It was like a $23 billion company. And Jerry, being very new, and maybe he did this from his previous jobs, called me up and he's like, "Hey Art, we gotta get a demo going. I need your best team, and the demo is like in 2 days, and we really got to show them what we got, And of course, we had a portfolio that was huge, so I didn't like going into a situation like that where it's very much just of a push, or as we say in great demo, throw it against the wall and see if it sticks, right? A harbor tour, not really the right thing to do. So I convinced Jerry to see if we can get them to just have a bit of a discovery call. Let's get to know them a little bit and find out what's going on there. And so Jerry took my advice. We had a meeting with them, which was developing the relationship, because, they're a $23 billion company. They're not going to decide something from one meeting, right? So we sat down with them, and pretty soon, I think there was 4 of us, and there was like 15 of them. It was mainly the IT department, and we were whiteboarding. They had one of those rooms where the whiteboards went all the way around the room. We were whiteboarding stuff out and talking about their processes and everything, and really getting to know them and what they were doing. And unbeknownst to us, because it wasn't planned, the CIO of this $23 billion company went walking by and looked inside and saw a bunch of the team there, whiteboarding and all that. So he came in and he started to, he's like, "Hey, what's going on here?" And they said, "Oh, we're talking with these guys and they're helping us with our information management and our product lifecycle management and all that." He goes, well, make sure that you remember to talk about this, and this isn't that important and all that. And he left and went down the hall, and I thought, wow, that was amazing. And I was just thinking back in my mind, back to your question about developing relationships and stuff, if we hadn't been having that discussion and doing that discovery and getting those relationships built, even in that short, probably it was an hour and a half at that point, probably it would have been more like us at the front of the room, the rest of the people sitting there, us telling them a bunch of stuff. The CIO could walk by and look in and go, hey, what are you all doing? Or he could keep walking, right? Or he could come in and go, what's going on here? And they'd be like, oh, we're just listening to this pitch, and maybe nothing happened. Well, it turned out we won millions and millions of dollars of business from that account. And I'm very sure that if we had just went in and sort of done our thing, and what Jerry initially wanted to do was just sort of do the pitch and not start by developing that relationship, I'm sure that we wouldn't have won that much business, because him stopping in and getting involved was key to the success of that. So it is about relationships first and foremost, and finding out what's going on. And I know all sales processes don't support that, but as a true sales engineer, pre-sales, this is the mindset that I find is most helpful. And I think other people appreciate that too. So now, and after that, Jerry never called me again to say, hey, we need to do a demo. It was always, hey, let's set up a meeting to get to know these people and figure out what was going on.
That's a great real life example of why curiosity and why the willingness to learn are such important qualities of a sales engineer.
Yeah, and it's a fine balance, because you're going to find salespeople that don't want to spend the time to do that. But I'd rather spend that hour or two up front to get to know them and see where the fit is and decide right away, what's the situation, as opposed to just trying to force it and then hope that we get something out of it. It's just not worth it for anybody. And I think we can burn some bridges in the process, which isn't a good idea, of course.
Yeah. No one likes being told what to do, but if they tell you what they need, I think it goes much smoother, as you say.
Yeah, my big philosophy is, turn it from a push into a pull. Let's see what we can find out that they need that we have, and that they are actually asking for it at some point. And that's where it becomes much more powerful, thinking about the buyer first.
Absolutely. That's great advice. And just thinking back to the skills for those looking to transition into pre-sales, it's really good to understand why you see things like growth mindset or willingness to learn, like we just talked about, or being passionate about the product. Those all come together to you caring for the customer and building that relationship that Art's talking about. They're not necessarily just buzzwords on an application, even though they may sound like it. All right, well, I will transition one more time here to our final set of questions. And this is going to be focused on those watching and how they can start learning more about the role. My first question here is, how would you recommend somebody watching can start learning about what pre-sales is? And then how would you recommend they can go start looking at potential careers?
So what pre-sales is, and then how they can pursue careers. So how to know what pre-sales is, I think it's a good idea to, first of all, there's great books on that in terms of what's needed. John Kerr's book, Mastering Technical Sales, which I do. I'm one of the principal facilitators for John Kerr. Great demo by Peter Cohan. I'm also, and really the only one that's doing it for John Kerr and Peter Cohan, so I deliver great demo as well. I'm a certified great demo partner. And then things like additional books like Garen Hess's book about selling is hard, buying is harder. I think it gives you a real good insight into what the buyer is all about. I would even recommend for new people going in, anybody that wants to go into pre-sales, spin selling. Now, I know it's been around forever, but the fundamentals of that are really key, and it's super simple to understand, and most methodologies in one way are built off of that. So spin selling, I think, is a really good book to read as well. And then somebody that's more on the sales side, because I think it's important for us not to learn about just pre-sales, but talking about relationships, the relationship with the account manager, the sales part of the process is so important. So things like, Jeffrey Gitomer is a name to look up, Gitomer, Jeffrey Gitomer. He does a lot about the sales side of it. And I think that can help us get the mindset of what the salesperson is, because as pre-sales, we're not just having the relationship with the customer. Our salesperson is an internal customer that we have. And so our relationship with them is just as, if not more important, so that we can work together better as a team. And Sam, you may not know this, but I've actually got a registered trademark on what I call seamless sales. And it's a play on words with SEAM, so the SE and the AM working together better seamlessly. And I'm writing a book about that, which I expect to come out next year, about seamless sales and the way we can work together better with our account managers. So anything that anybody going into pre-sales can learn about the customer, the mindset of a buyer, the mindset of the stakeholder, the decision process, that's key. And then definitely learning more about your sales rep and the way that you can get along with them and the way that you can work together. Because that is what I've found in my career to be the most rewarding, is when a sales rep and I are on lockstep of the philosophy. I don't like the idea about just going out there and, a hard sell or any of that. That's not what we're talking about. It's about that relationship and being honest about it and truthful and looking for a win-win.
I love that. I love the SEAM. That's great.
Thank you.
I think that's an important thing to learn, especially as you transition into the career, that there are two distinct roles here, at least in the technology space, where you have the sales engineer, which is everything we've been talking about, and then you have the account manager, account executive, whatever they call it at the company, where they're actually carrying through the sales cycle and the sales process and doing the prospecting and all that fun stuff. But this emphasis on the relationship between the two and how to work together, I think, really drives the point that they are two distinct roles with two distinct responsibilities that must work together for a common outcome.
Yeah, and going back to what I shared at the beginning about when I became an account manager, as well as being the pre-sales and post-sales, I'm not sure that that's really an optimal setup, because there are, I wouldn't call it conflicting, but there's very definite things that a salesperson does. And as pre-sales, sometimes we have a tendency to think, their job is easy. They set up the meetings and they get all the money, But there's a lot more to it than that. And a big part of it is how we work together as a team. So I would definitely recommend investing in that area and learning more about that, and then going in with eyes wide open about, hey, that's just as important for me as how I'm going to be interacting with the customer. And by the way, we also have to know our technology too.
So jumping into part 2 here, how can someone who's learned about pre-sales now go and find a career?
Yeah, I might not be the best person to give advice about that, only because of the fact that I stumbled into it. So I would say, first of all, connect with Sam and with, in terms of National Society of Sales Engineers, get involved in the PreSales Collective, join the LinkedIn groups that have anything to do with pre-sales, and you'll start to hear and see what things appeal to you. I would definitely try to see, what vertical you might be interested in, or what territory or whatever. Also, is it in terms of being more transactional versus more of a B2B type space. So there's a few things at a macro level I would suggest. And then it's about relationships. I think networking is so important. And I know that's very cliche and sort of overused, and it sounds like it's from the 80s, but the reality is that the connections we make are important because we can learn. I think having a curiosity of what others have seen and talking with others about what they are seeing out there and what's going on can give you an idea. And also, that person you're talking with may not have a job for you, but they may know somebody that does. And that's very often what happens, is it's that second or third level relationship. So leveraging LinkedIn, leveraging your relationships, and then just finding out more about the role and being connected to those active groups that are doing these types of things so that you can find out where you want to fit in. But if you have a curiosity, if you've got an engineering type mindset, and you love helping people, I think it's an ideal role to go into.
I think networking, like you mentioned, yes, it does sound common, but I don't think after my first job that I got, I'm not sure there's any job or opportunity I've pursued since then that hasn't been a result of my network, that hasn't been a friend. My current position was a friend recommendation, which turned into a great role. I got some opportunities to work actually in Huntsville. During college, I traveled back and forth to work on a project with the Army. Again, it was through just professors I built relationships with and students in the clubs I was in, direct output of that. So,
yeah, all those moves we made, I can trace it back to really one degree of separation. Well, I should say two, I suppose. But the point being, there was something that connected every single one of those moves and career things. And hey, if you're new and you're coming out of school, or even if you're in school and you're thinking about pre-sales, these are all things you can be doing in parallel with what you're already doing, and jump on it. The younger you are, the more opportunity you can take to learn this, and it's through these different experiences that'll help you understand where you want to go and develop those connections.
PreSales Collective actually has a cool experience in their Slack where they will match you with a new person periodically, and you just set up a coffee chat with them and do a 30-minute call and meet them. And so that's a really cool way to start your network if you haven't. And also, just this might not be directly related to network, but in terms of jobs, they have a job board where they try and get every pre-sales job on there. So that's also a great place to start looking. So, well, I think we're getting close to the end of time here, but I'm going to head into some rapid fire questions. You don't have to answer them fast for the sake of being fast, but I'll just I won't dig as deep into these ones. You can keep them at surface level, and we'll probably get through 2 or 3 of them. Does that sound good?
Okay, sure.
So the first one, what do you wish you knew before becoming a pre-sales engineer?
Well, probably just more about the buyer's perspective. I think it was pretty easy for me to figure out that, we had something we needed to offer. I understood our solution. What I would benefit from was a better understanding upfront of what is the person I'm working with going through. What are they thinking? How do they decide? What is the decision process and things like that? And then secondarily to that would be to learn more about what the sales role is, for which I'm the partner.
What is the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
I mean, I get ready, and then one thing I don't do is I don't, check my emails right away. I try to stay off of my phone until I'm really ready, functional, and doing whatever I need to do to get the day started. But very typically, after getting ready, I'll hit the stuff that I need to do to be most creative, because for me, the morning is when the juices are flowing and things like that. I'm thinking, my brain's engaged. I kind of wake up engaged. So I like to hit the stuff that I need to do that's creative, writing, doing things like that. But not checking emails, that's for sure.
I like that you did that. Like, what not to do, because that's just as important. What advice did you get that was the most rewarding? And this can be any advice throughout your entire career.
I think it was when I was running the CAD system for a company called More Business Form. So we were making the machines for the company. And I had a manager, John Saltesiak, who I felt like really inspired me in my career. But it wasn't pre-sales at the time. It was still implementing technology. But it seems to me one of the things he helped me understand was the idea about keeping it simple. Really focusing on the things that mattered. And we all know the KISS principle, but usually it's like derogatory, like keep it simple, stupid, like duh, keep it simple. And I took it and turned that into something I think much deeper, and it really forms the basis of a lot of what I do. So my KISS that I've redefined I believe based on John's philosophy and his guidance and mentorship, is my version of it is keep it simple and successful. So the KISS rule, keep it simple and successful, with the idea being do as much as you need to keep it successful, but don't overkill it, which is hard as an engineer to do, because typically I want to take it to the 99th percentile, and you can't always do that. I think pre-sales is a lot about compromising and knowing when you need to go further and when you don't need to. Like for a demo or anything like that, like have it enough there that it's going to make the point, but don't overkill it, because it's typically a waste of time and it's going to be confusing. So keep it simple and successful, I think, is probably the best advice that I wound up gleaning out and turning into this moniker that I use today.
And that's one of those things that sounds simple itself, like just, stay at a high level, but it's really hard to do, especially if you're coming from an engineering background. And that might be an advantage for you coming into pre-sales if you're not coming from an engineering background, is that you learn what you need to know from the engineering or technology side, and you're able to keep it at the same level as your customers.
And I'll tell you what, it comes in it's very important with this relationship with the account manager, because they are very much like, let's just go, high level, don't give me the details. And typically, most of us coming from a technical background are very detail oriented. We need everything answered before we do anything. So I think that this KISS principle has helped me with how to develop that relationship better as a sales team, because giving them too much is not helpful. It's actually, it makes us, it doesn't help. Let me just put it that way. So keep it simple and successful is a great philosophy for that relationship, but also for the customer. Like a lot of our demos, 80% of what we showed was the same, but we made it look like it was for that customer based on the things that we could do to tailor it for them. And so it was successful, but yet it was still done in a simple way.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking today. A lot of good information for those looking to transition into the pre-sales role. And so I hope everyone finds this useful. I hope we inspired some people to get out there and start looking at that opportunity.
Yeah, definitely, Sam. Thanks for the time. And yeah, the key thing I think is see where you get led and seize the opportunities as they come up, and look at it as not, career jobs. Look at it as the development of a long-term relationship with a variety of different people. And when we're putting the other person first and looking for a win-win approach, you really can't go wrong. And you'll learn a heck of a lot, and you'll meet a lot of great people along the way. So that I think would be what I would take away from all of my career experience here over the last 40 years.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much, Art, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Sounds good, Sam. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. And good luck, everybody. Thanks for listening, and glad to help out in any way possible.